This Weatherman has a panic attack live on air, so let's take a look at this.
We've got big falls right through that part of the country, and we're going to see lots more rain in the days ahead. I'm actually going to need...
Okay, so now I've seen this video before, but if you notice, you can already see that he's starting to panic. And a lot of this stuff I can really recognize because it's things that I would do when I panic. So if you haven't joined this channel before, my name is Peter, and I've been living with panic disorder and agoraphobia since just before COVID. I became completely housebound. I was having severe panic attacks every day, and I would call the ambulance every single day, pretty much, sometimes twice a day. And I'd spend a lot of time in the hospital waiting room because that's the only place I felt safe. Yet I'd still panic. But so I've had a few hundreds and hundreds of panic attacks. And so seeing this, I can really identify some of those kind of things that you might not notice if you don't have panic attacks. But if you've had a panic attack before, you can definitely notice it. So, for example, have a look
We've
here.
got big falls right through that part of the country, and we're going...
So already this kind of, like the swallowing is probably getting a bit tense there. You can hear it in his breath as well. There's some kind of tension happening.
Going to see lots more rain in the days ahead. I'm actually going to need to stop for a...
I think as well this kind of, I always do stuff like this. You can see in literally the video I did yesterday, when I went to the park with my dog and did some sprinting. It's that feeling of like my heart racing, feeling out of breath. And I kind of just do these hand things to distract or to just have a different sensation than what I'm worrying about in that moment.
For a second, some of you may know that I occasionally get affected by some panic attacks, and actually that's happening right now. Lisa.
I really like that because, so I don't know his history of panic attacks and I don't know how long he's had panic attacks, but the fact that he's, it's like everyone's worst nightmare. Like, okay, you have panic attacks and you got to do something where you're like live on camera and then you end up having a panic attack. It's because it's already bad enough, but then being on camera as well and everyone's watching you, it's not fun. But I bet that kind of the people watching him is the last of his worries because he's probably feeling like he's gonna die. I don't know what specifically he has anxiety about. So for me, it's health anxiety. So if I have a panic attack, I interpret it as I'm dying. But I know there's people out there that have really bad social anxiety, and the worst part of a panic attack for them is embarrassing themselves or making a fool out of themselves. One of my friends, the reason she doesn't go on a plane is because she's worried about having and being stuck on a plane, having a panic attack, and what other people might think about that. Oh, they'll think she's crazy. Oh, there's something wrong with her. But for me, it's definitely the life or death situation. So I'm not sure about this gentleman. I think his name's Nate, but I don't know. Let's keep watching.
Maybe I could hand back to you.
You certainly can.
It's really smooth as well how he did it. Like, I'm having a panic attack. This is what's happening. I don't think I'm going to be able to keep going at the moment. Let's pass it back to you. And that is exactly the way that I think people should handle panic attacks. And that's what I've learned to do as well. When I'm going somewhere or when I'm doing some exposure therapy or I'm in a situation where I'm very uncomfortable, if it gets to the point where I think, okay, look, I can't do it, I'll just gently tell someone that I'm having a panic attack. This might happen, or I might feel like this, and just describing what might happen to me kind of helps me to put what's happening as a panic attack, if that makes sense. Because if I say, oh, I'm having a panic attack, I might feel really anxious, I might need to sit down, I might need to do this, I might whatever, it kind of tells me that, hey, what I'm about to go through is a panic attack. Because one thing that I think people don't always realize is when you're having a panic attack, you don't always think you're having a panic attack. So the fact that he's at the point where he can identify that he's having a panic attack, in that moment shows me that he's probably, at some stage in a recovery journey, or he's had therapy, or he's doing CBT. He definitely has education about panic attacks, because a lot of the time, especially when you first start getting panic attacks, you don't think it's a panic attack. You think it's a heart attack, or you think there's something completely wrong with you.
Nate, and Nate wrote a great piece on the ABC Online website about this, and I reckon we might re-up it because it's fantastic.
Live TV triggered my first panic attack, and I still deal with anxiety. That's really interesting. So let's have a look. Live TV triggered my first panic attack. Live TV triggered my first panic attack, and I still deal with anxiety. I had my first ever panic attack live on TV. It was absolutely terrifying and completely reshaped my understanding on mental health. That's interesting. Let me know in the comments where you had your first panic attack, because that's always quite an interesting point. I think for me, I can't even remember when I had my first panic attack. I think I must have been really young. Like, for example, I can remember first times I had really high anxiety. But first panic attack, that's a tough one, because I used to have panic attacks years and years ago, but now I wouldn't even consider them panic attacks to what I have been having recently. But definitely, I think I remember watching, like, late at night when I was a kid, some kind of TV show about brain surgery, and then I had a headache and I completely lost it. I couldn't sleep the whole night, and I was like telling my parents, something's wrong with my brain, I'm gonna have to have the brain surgery, I'm gonna die. It was horrible. So first panic attack on live TV. As I stood there under the studio lights, talking to people having their morning coffee and wiping sleep from their eyes, my heart was racing, I was gasping for breath, and sweat was pouring out as my brain screamed, run. But I was standing in one of my favorite places doing the thing I love most. Yeah, so it's like the thing is with panic attacks, they are real physiological things happening. You get this flush of adrenaline, all these symptoms happening, and your brain is just acting on instinct, saying something's wrong, get out of here. And it can happen at any time. It doesn't have to necessarily like be triggered specifically by something. It could just be you're stressed and you just got that stress level just slightly too high, and it triggered that fight or flight in an inappropriate situation. Anxiety had never been an issue in my life before, even though the high stress situations weren't a stranger. But this time I wasn't a naval officer moments away running from a warship aground, or standing in front of a stadium filled with 12,000 people. So that's actually really important, because panic attacks are very similar. I mean, anxiety itself is important. So if you are going to a job interview, a bit of anxiety is quite good to kind of better prepare. Or if you're about to do like a sports event, anxiety can keep you on your toes. It helps you. And if you were in a dangerous situation, if you weren't anxious, you might not feel the need to escape. So it's very important emotion. But when you have too much, and that's what he's saying here, is that he's not in a situation where this level of anxiety is required. There are situations where that level of anxiety is required, but that wasn't one of them. So that's why it's weird. Instead, I had just jogged the 40 meters from my desk to my position. I had left it a little too late, and the show's control room was worried I wasn't making it in time. I did, and it was barely an exertion, but it was enough to. That's interesting. So I think it seems like what happens here is, so he was a bit late, and he had that pressure of the control room, like, you got to get there. So he did that little run. And you would expect that your heart would start racing, even if it's just a short little jog distance, or you're rushing. But it's not just the rushing, it was all that pressure culminated into that one point. And he's sitting there like, okay, I made it. Why is my heart still going? But and that it didn't go down, it didn't release. And then the interpretation was that I need to run. I dropped my on-air demeanor. In a way, I'm lucky. My brain was obviously having a problem, but it's also incredibly curious and hungry to figure out how the world works. As I stood there trying to make it sound like I wasn't slightly puffed. Yeah, so he's and he's trying to then control it, which is making it worse, because the more you try and control it, the worse the symptoms get. All of a sudden, my body started tingling, my heart rate rose, and I realized I was drenched in sweat. As soon as the camera was off me, I dropped my on-air demeanor and doubled over, trying to catch my breath, lightheaded and confused about what was happening. Yeah, the first panic attack, you always have no idea what is happening. I waved off help from a floor manager and headed back to my desk. But 15 minutes later, I had my second panic attack, and it nearly broke me. Standing on my usual spot, completely calm and composed, I saw the words "weather, throw, Nate joins us." Yeah, so he's just had a panic attack in that specific situation, standing in front of the weather thing. Didn't know what's going on. No one told him it was a panic attack, probably. Calms down probably a little bit, like, okay. And then the moment he sees those words again, now there's this association with that place and this level of panic. This time it was much worse. I started shaking, my vision narrowed, my heart was pounding like I'd run a marathon. I couldn't breathe. I needed to be anywhere else, and I had no idea why. The team reacted quickly, slotting someone else in so the show could go on uninterrupted, but my confusion and fear started growing, and my emotions raged. Yeah. I mean, this is panic, and people just don't understand what it is. It's not just, oh, I'm scared, so I need to panic. It's physical. So what was going on? I'd later find out that what I was experiencing was diagnosable and manageable, but in that moment, I thought my career was over. Something was taking control of me without my permission or understanding, and it was preventing me from doing what made me me. And it's amazing because he's obviously still a weatherman, and he had his first panic attack on live TV, and he's, I assume, working through it. But the fact that I'm sure he has done many times without having a panic attack, and then he has one, in the video that we watched, but he doesn't let it stop him. That's the important thing. You can have panic attacks. I still get panic attacks. The panic attacks actually aren't the problem. What the problem is if I let the panic attacks stop me from doing whatever it is I want to do, My place of joy and purpose was now an existential hellhole. Yep, corrupted in the quarter of an hour. I more than cried, I sobbed. The fear of I won't be able to do what I want to do again. No, it's horrible. And I remember when I was completely agoraphobic, couldn't leave the house. It just felt like all the things I wanted to do, I can't do anything, and it's just normal stuff that everyone does. But another part of my brain was intrigued. What was going on, and what do we do to fix it? I think that's the same with me. So I find the brain psychology very interesting, and that's kind of why I have the ability to talk about this so much and do these daily videos, is because I actually do find it interesting. I was stood down for the rest of the day. My co-host Madeline Lynn Moderis very tactfully told the audience the weatherman is under the weather. That's good. So I gathered my things and went straight to the doctor, and that was a good call. You should always go to the doctor. New symptom that you don't know about. If it's your first panic attack, then go to the doctor, because just ignoring it when you don't know what's going on, that's not going to help. As I sat on the train, the other part of my brain emerged from the fog and started to look at the situation from a distance. I knew what my experience had been, but what actually happened? Memories of neuroscience lectures from more than a decade ago got me thinking. Neurons that fire together, also he's a neuroscience guy, wired together. So perhaps my brain was associating that and seeing those words as something dangerous. Exactly like I said, yeah. I knew one thing for sure. I needed a solution, and fast. I was due to be back on the telly that night. I think at this stage the solution is to get back in that situation as quick as you can. I don't think it's a thing of, okay, now I need to find some magic thing that's going to get me back there. No, the solution is to get back there. Now you know what's going on. You need to get back there, and you need to iron out that little crease that has formed when you can't remove yourself from the situation. Luckily, my doctor was all over it. We chatted through my experience, and he identified it as a classic panic attack. Good work. He prescribed a beta blocker. Which would help reduce my body's reactions. I find that, I find that wild. I'm not going to get into like medications and stuff, but the guy had his first 2 panic attacks, and you've given him a medicine already. And beta blockers are great; they actually do work. You know, beta blockers, I guess they work by, I think it basically, when he goes in that situation, that flush response, the adrenaline, it's kind of muted. So people use them on driving tests sometimes. They're like, oh, I'm scared of my driving test. I get too flustered, and they take beta blockers. They're still like mentally scared, but the physical reaction doesn't happen as much. So they're able to just do it. But I find it strange that he medicated him immediately after 2 attacks without without kind of, I don't know, sending him to therapy or something to truly understand what's happening, because then he would realize he doesn't necessarily need the beta blockers, and he's only had 2 panic attacks. My fear is that he would use the beta blocker and it'd be, oh, okay, fine, this tonight was fine because I had the beta blocker. And then one day he runs out or he forgets it. Do you know how high his anxiety is going to be? Because he forgot his beta blockers the night before. And that's just going to create its own cycle. So I find that a little bit weird. It took me a long time to get recommended medicine for anxiety. So I don't know if it's different in the UK or whatever. That night, I made it to air with my body only heavily recommending run rather than screaming it. Exactly, so that's what a beta blocker does. Over the next few weeks, I dealt with the anxiety attacks every time I stood at the weather wall. But I learned ways to distract my brain. Pressing my thumbnail to the side of my finger helped give me something else to focus, while the meteorologist autopilot kicked in and I floated somewhere in between. Seeing a psychologist helped to confirm that there weren't any other contributing factors, and while his initial advice to remove myself from the situation wasn't exactly what I needed, we worked together to come up with alternate. That's also, I don't. If you're there and you are okay, I have panic attacks because of this situation when I go on air because I had this one panic attack, and notice that there was just no specific trauma. It's almost that the stress of the first incident where he was late combined in a perfect storm with the physical responses from when he got up too quick and then not understanding this caused the first panic attack, right? The second panic attack happened because of the association with that's the place where the first one happened, right? The third one was muted because he took some beta blockers. Now the psychologist is saying, okay, so go up there and when you panic, remove yourself from the situation. So what happens is, okay, so let's say I'm the weatherman, I'm doing the weather, I'm starting to feel really panicky. Oh, my anxiety is rising. Okay, I've got to leave, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And your anxiety will go immediately down. But guess what happens? Your brain is saying, I just removed myself from that situation, right? I just removed myself and my anxiety went really down. That situation is really dangerous. I don't want to go there again. And then the next time you have that situation and you have to go there, oh my God, I have to go back to the situation that I had to remove myself from. And the anxiety is going to be way worse than last time because you removed yourself. What you need to do is, okay, I'm in this situation, my anxiety is going really high. Okay, let me sit with it, float with it there for a while. And anxiety doesn't go up forever as you probably at home think it does and what I used to think it does. You're not going to go crazy, nothing's going to happen. What happens is you go up. Oh my God, I have a panic attack. Oh God. If you stay there, eventually, I'm not dead yet. Oh, the symptoms have to, they're self-regulating, they have to stop eventually. Okay. Oh, I'm through the situation. Oh my God, I did it. That's fantastic. Wow, that's amazing. I did, as you can see in all of my exposure therapy videos. So when he does that situation and he gets through it, his body is like, oh my God, I was so anxious, But it turns out, because I stuck around, I didn't need to be anxious in that situation. So next time he goes to that situation, he goes, oh, well, last time, I got a bit anxious, but it totally went away. And, I don't need to feel anxious about that situation. Okay. So I think it's weird that they're saying this. The final narrative we settled on is that the first time I was controlling my breathing. So yeah, absolutely. The more you tried, people recommend breathing exercises all the time. No breathing exercises if you're having a panic attack. No trying to control your breathing. You're just making it worse. It's you can't do that. You're making yourself feel like you can't breathe. So my brain wasn't getting the oxygen it needed, so it did the usual things. Yeah, so if you hyperventilate, you get more more oxygen in your blood, and that can make you feel lightheaded. It can make you tingly. Yeah, increasing my heart rate, beginning to breathe, and I ignored it. It never happened when I was sitting on the couch, only at the weather wall. Yeah, that's a clear indicator because it's tied to that specific situation a lot of the time. But it can happen in other situations as well. And it will link itself to those as well. And that's how you become agoraphobic, because it starts linking itself to different situations and coming anywhere until you realize that anywhere I go, it can happen. I'm not going anywhere. The next time I was standing there, my brain recognized the situation. I stand on the same spot at the same time every day, yes, and the same words pop up. And so it's this Pavlov's bells thing happening. The beta blockers kept that at bay, slowly retraining my brain that we were safe and that we didn't need to panic. I mean, yeah, I get that, but also I don't think it needed those to do that. I think it would have been quicker if you just went for it a bit. We want our brain to react to danger, but it needs to get it right for that response to be useful, correct? I weaned myself off the beta blockers, so that's good. Because with these things, you don't want to depend on them. You want to use them, so like crutches, you use them as crutches. If you broke your leg, you use crutches. And when your leg heals, if you continue using crutches, your leg will become very weak and there'll be muscle atrophy and your leg will be worse than it was before you even broke your leg, right? So you need to get rid of the crutches at the appropriate time. So that's fine. I had mostly severed these neurological connections fairly quickly, so they haven't become hardwired. That's really good. But it turns out absolutely. He's having a stroke. A year later, I had another major panic attack on air. This time I had the tools to quickly recover, but I had neglected to tell our new co-host, Lisa Miller, about my anxiety issues. It had been so long, I assumed it was no longer an issue. That's very interesting. So a lot of people, especially when you don't entirely work through panic attacks, let's say you become anxious enough, or you go on an antidepressant, or you just have less anxiety, and so you happen to have less panic attacks. You still haven't like overcome panic attacks. You've hidden them for a while, and when you get to that stress level again, they immediately come back, and they can happen in the same way. I recently asked her what she recalled, and it opened my eyes. I remember you watching beginning to roll into your weather spiel, something you do a dozen of times a day flawlessly. I'm not sure what made me glance up sharply, whether it was slight hesitation or dragging off the words. Sitting a few meters from you, I was struck that it now felt you were wading through mud, each word seeming to need so much effort. Yeah, that's right. My first thoughts was he's having a stroke. So, well, I mean, that's my first thoughts when I have a panic attack, because I begin stuttering, and then I can't talk straight or think straight, and I'm thinking, my brain, oh no. The stillness of the studio, or someone flails on air like that, is something I'd not experienced with. She's really hitting hard with these description. I frantically looked to the floor manager, Joe Sumig, and could see his eyes flickering as the brain ticked over. How do we save this? It was only later, well, you save it by just being compassionate and, hey, you need a glass of water? It's okay, let's go to the other person. Back to you, Joe. It was only later I learned what had overcome you. It seemed to come out of nowhere and was gone the next day, although I remember you did ask him to keep an eye on you a little more closely. And was gone. Yeah, that's interesting. And was gone. Some people think that people with anxiety faking it, because one day they seem totally fine, next day they're all anxious, and then another day it's completely gone. It was such a lesson for me to watch that panic anxiety attack happen. That was a panic attack. It's not often it happens for people live on air. I learned an important lesson that day. making sure your support network knows that you sometimes need assistance and they can support you is essential. So I actually had a similar thing like this. I had to do a live session. I'm just checking this thing is actually recording and it can actually hear me. I had to do a live, that's anxiety at play. I had to do a live session for TikTok. It was really interesting. I got invited to actual TikTok like London offices. They had a whole thing set up. I was with Dr. Emeka, Amy Milley, I'm sure you've heard of them. If you follow me, you definitely know Amy Milley, and some others. And I had to do like live questions to a live audience who were like typing in questions, and they gave us the microphone. We did one practice and it was kind of okay. And then the real one, my heart went so crazy and I was so terrified. I just knew like, oh my God, I'm going to have a panic attack on a talk about mental health, a panel about mental health. And I could just feel it coming and my heart started skipping beats, like really skipping beats. Like every second beat was skipped. And I knew that I just have to let it do that. I just have to let all of this stuff just flush over me and just allow it to happen. And it kept going. But as soon as I really allowed it, I was just like, okay, that's happening. My heart slowed down. It was like, hey, okay, turns out we don't need to run away. We don't need to do anything. So I can calm down now, because I really let it flush over me. And I actually got through that. And apparently people couldn't tell that I was anxious. So I found that like really a success. So let's see. I learned an important lesson that day, making sure your support network knows that you sometimes need assistance and how they can support you is essential. I've changed my perspective. I've had more panic attacks since then, yeah. And on News Breakfast, we've seen several people dealing with their anxiety on live television. Interestingly, all men. That's actually interesting because they say that women have more anxiety than men. I think it's like double. Or is it just because men don't talk about it? And if I look at my statistics as well, my audience is basically like 80% women on pretty much all the platforms. I think YouTube is the one that has the highest men, because YouTube as a whole is, I think, mainly men, much more men. For me, it's men, and the team is quick to jump to action and make sure the show goes on without too much fuss. I mean, that's what they're trained for, right? To keep the show on the road, and that the person is safe and cared for, and that's extremely important. So they seem very supportive, which is great. Didn't fire him for having a panic attack on the air, like people would think. For me, it changed my perspective. And while I appreciate that things like anxiety and depression are very much real, I had no idea about the complete lack of control you can sometimes have over your brain and all the ways in which it can take over. And that's the thing. That's for me. For me, I say, once you have a panic attack, there's no control in it. You are in fight or flight and you can't do anything about that until it goes away. You can make it quicker by just allowing it to happen, because that allows you to quickly come to terms that nothing is actually wrong. The more you can try and control it, the more you keep perpetuating the false belief and that fear cycle. It's a powerful tool, but when things go even slightly wrong, it can be an incredible burden, yeah. And I do find that the people that are more inquisitive or more creative are more likely to have panic attacks. The people that think a lot about life and things like that. It's easier to get caught in those thinking patterns. Watching back the videos of me having a panic attack on live television have shown me that it's not always obvious what's going on from the outside. I took far more in control than I was feeling, though I can see the telltale signs of panic that others might miss. Exactly. Like some people say my videos are fake because that's not panicking. Someone even on like my most recent video, they said, let me see if I can find it. Give me a sec. They said, a comment really made me mad. What did he say? It was his latest video, yeah. So someone said, oh, I think they deleted it. Oh no, it's the last video, sorry. I'm trying to upload so many more videos, and that's why I'm trying this format too. Let me know if you like this one, just kind of just talking like just hanging out. Let's just talk about topics, have some fun. Okay, yeah, this video did pretty viral. I gave this guy the pin of shame. It's on my video, day 1 of doing exposure therapy every day to cure my anxiety. And I know cure is the wrong word, but it's clickbait because we're on YouTube. He said, I'm so anxious, but not too anxious to vlog about it. Look confidently into the camera, make dramatic content, and feel triggered all over. Really believable and relatable. So this is when I'm going on a tube and I'm trying to show that, and I'm trying to show, like, doing exposure therapy can help. And I basically look a little bit nervous. I'm like, ooh. And then the train got stuck in the tunnel, and I was like looking, showing that. So nothing happened in the video, essentially. And then that's fake. Anyway. Watching back the videos, blah, 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 though I can see telltale thing, yep. I still occasionally have those feelings in return. In fact, as I write, even remembering my experience have raised my hackles a bit. And even reading this a little bit, as I was talking so much, I started feeling a bit out of breath. And then a couple of years ago, that would have turned me into a panic attack just from talking. I had a panic attack from making TikToks because I was trying to talk so much and I got out of breath, and then my heart started racing and skipping. But talking about my anxiety and seeking treatment mean that's something I can live with and manage. And it means I can keep doing the thing I love. So I think that's fantastic. That's a really inspirational story from, what's his name? Nate Byrne. And really, like, cool network. It seems like they even had him on afterwards.
Very pleased to say that our wonderful colleague Nate is back with us.
Hey, sorry if I gave anybody a bit of a scare there.
Yes, not really, because you've been very honest before about getting panic attacks on air, and it's so...
That's so... people always, I get in them comments like, how do I tell people I have panic attacks? Well, you just tell them. I didn't have a choice because I took over my life so much that, like, as hard as it is to say, I was a bit of a burden on, like, my family, because I was having such dramatic panic attacks all the time. So I didn't have a choice to, like, tell them. But if I had a choice, I would tell everyone. And anytime I go in a new situation, when I was at university, when I was getting a new job, I do tell them that I get panic attacks. And this is what it means. And this is what it might affect. But I'm trying my best. And it's best for me to live as if I don't have them. So don't make accommodations for me and say, oh, Peter has panic attacks, so he doesn't have to come here, or he doesn't have to do this. But know that it's going to be harder for me to do that a lot of the time, right? So you have that honesty, and people can help you, but also you don't want to just be accommodated and actually make your anxiety worse by making it easy, if that makes sense.
It's so great for people to know that it can happen to anyone.
You gave me a scare because I thought I'd have to finish doing the weather report, and I'm no good at that.
Well, he was talking about Queensland, so I was going to step up.
Well, and today would be the day to do it because there is so much going on for Queensland. But thank you all so much for helping out.
Yeah, fantastic. That was hilarious, that guy. You gave me a scare because I thought I was going to have to do the weather report. That's hilarious. I think that's a good way to finish the video. Thanks everyone for watching, subscribe, and like the video. Comment if I should do more like this. I quite enjoyed this one. See you in a bit.